Welcome back to First Blood Speed Review. So today we're reviewing Darksiders for PC, and this is played through Steam. In fact, I think now the only thing you can purchase is the Warmastered edition, and that will include the original version of the game, which you can play in HD. And the major difference is that the original PC port was like maybe 6 gigabytes large, and Warmastered one with new textures and lighting is around 25. Maybe 30, and literally the only thing that's different between the two games is just graphical updates, and really most of the graphical updates are through lighting and shaders. Alright, so does the game work? Yeah, the game works perfectly fine. There's a fair amount of graphical options you can choose from. Most of the new graphical updates are going to be through the Warmastered edition, which you're not going to see much in this video, but the major differences were things like anti-aliasing, automatic resolution, automatic vertical sync, things like that. A little bit of more ability with like shadows and some extra lighting effects that weren't available back then. The game has both keyboard and mouse support, and of course built-in controller support. If you play with keyboard and mouse, it's pretty much, it plays like most action games with keyboard and mouse. You use the mouse to both look and attack. You know, you can map like WASD and all that stuff to all the different skills. Personally, because I played so many action games with a controller, I enjoyed playing it much more with a controller. So Darksiders is an action game that plays very similar to things like God of War or Castlevania Lords of Shadows, the first one. So it has very smooth combat and sort of progressive enhancements of abilities and weapons, things like that. The game starts out with pretty much a tutorial stage, like you play through this entire level that pretty much teaches you the basics and introduces you to all the different movements, targeting, and things like that. Once you finish that first stage and get introduced to the game proper, you'll get access to a shop to unlock abilities and weapons. The game isn't open world, but it's pretty much like a Metroidvania style game, so that basically it's linear because there's certain things that you just can't get past until you have a certain item or a certain ability. So until you get that ability, you're free to move around throughout the stage to all the parts that you can access, but there'll be parts that you can't, and then eventually you'll come back. Now, the main gameplay, like I said, is very similar to God of War, and I've seen a lot of reviews from people kind of saying that God of War is really only similar in the combat and things like that, and that the game is actually more like Legend of Zelda for adults, and that's really not true at all. The game is really like God of War, like in all aspects. The only difference is that Darksiders gives you more freedom to move around and is a much longer game. So you pretty much kill enemies and gather souls, which is basically currency. You use the souls to upgrade to unlock new combos or attacks. You don't have to put them into your weapons. Your weapons actually automatically level up just from killing stuff. So your weapons have levels, which is kind of nice because you don't have to visit a shop to level them up, but you gotta kill a lot of stuff with them. Then you have your ability bars. So you have Wrath, which allows you to do special attacks, and then you have your hit point bar. And both of these, you find pieces scattered about in chests. When you get enough pieces, it increases your bars. If that doesn't sound like God of War to you, probably haven't played God of War. Now, finally, you also have secondary weapons, which play exactly like secondary weapons in God of War. So the main one you get in the beginning, or that you can get in the beginning, is Sight, and it's pretty much like a wide swinging area attack. It's set up on a different key, so you can be unleashing a combo with your sword and then switch over to like a wide area attack with the Scythe. So it's pretty much just like most modern action games. The only difference is until you have the Scythe, you don't really have a lot of wide area attack. And then there's a few other things that you'll start to unlock as you progress through the game. You'll find pieces for an armor set, and if you get all the pieces, you'll get the armor. You'll also find what's called artifacts, and artifacts are pretty much just hidden items that you can sell to the shop for a lot of souls up front, and that's going to help you so you don't have to grind all the time. For the most part, I found that the pace of soul acquisition was very good, so that you felt like you were unlocking things fast enough that it didn't feel like you were just kind of waiting to get enough things, but at the same time you weren't like running out of options. Like, you actually have to think and plan like what you want to unlock at what time, because you won't get souls fast enough to just mass unlock everything at once, which I think is a good thing. And then one other thing is you can also buy items. So like you can buy a healing item, or you can buy an item to fill up your wrath bar, and you can buy those from the shop. I didn't really find a need to purchase the regular items. And then also death in Darksiders is very forgiving. The game auto saves constantly, and pretty much if you die, you just restart from your last checkpoint, which usually isn't very far back, and it'll even save any souls and items that you gathered in the last life between the checkpoint and when you died. And speaking of saving, one of my favorite aspects of the game is you can save whenever you want. Saving is not a mechanic that should be used to incorporate difficulty. I was really happy to see that you could save whenever you wanted and save to different files. So is there anything about the game that I don't really enjoy? For me, there's not a lot of problems with the game. It has great voice acting, the story is unique, the art style works. In fact, for me, it really feels more like I'm playing a mix of Spawn and God of War, which is totally awesome. Not to mention you have Mark Hamill as the Watcher.
Remember that, or I will really get under your skin.
But the major thing that most people really don't like about Darksiders is once you get into the puzzles. This is where the whole argument was like, oh, it's Legend of Zelda for adults, because there's puzzles and dungeons. Okay, God of War had plenty of puzzles. In fact, that was the one thing about the God of War games that totally sucked. And so far, the puzzles in Darksiders aren't half as annoying, but I could see why some people would get slightly put off by it. And probably the other thing that I would say that is a little annoying is Darksiders does, at least in the beginning, does have this tendency to throw in sort of like mini-game style progression things. So you might be phenomenal at doing the fighting and all these things on the hard difficulty, and then you gotta do this weird flying segment, and you never play any kind of flying shooters, and you just get destroyed. I could see that happening to some people, and that would be really frustrating. You also will be forced to do God of War style challenges. So usually I make a lot of comparisons to God of War in this video. If you ever play God of War, there were some challenges you could unlock at the end of the game that would be in like an arena style, and you'd have to do something like kill a bunch of enemies in a certain time limit or use a special skill. You are forced to do this in Darksiders, a relatively early part of the game. I didn't have problems with this because I've played a lot of action games, but if you can't do it, you're gonna be stuck forever. Those few issues aside, Darksiders is a blast to play. After my first taste of blood, I was hooked on this game. I will say that I don't think the tutorial stage is a good representation of the rest of the game, and so I would urge anyone to get through that first stage and get into the actual game, because it becomes a million times better than that, and the game is totally worth your money. Totally worth your money.
I say bark, you bark, and if I have to kick you, you'd better not bare your teeth. Understand?
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out the links in the description if you want to help support me. I'll see you next time.